Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm here with Plato, and we're bringing you a story from Screen Rant. The DC Universe reboot keeps getting more confusing. And that is correct. If you think about it, James Gunn is kind of just shooting in the dark here with this whole thing, the DCU. Because they've got Blue Beetle, who's supposed to bridge the gap between the DCEU and his version of the DC. And it's not looking good. Especially since the movie is projected not to make a lot of money in the box office. Of course, people have been surprised by other movies, like Barbie. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's going to make a lot of money. But they're trying to bridge the gap story-wise. The Flash movie, well, I guess, was supposed to reset the universe, but it doesn't. They're going to go on about that in this article, which we're going to read here. The DC Extended Universe is getting a partial reboot. But the details are confusing, with some characters staying and others being recast. It's because these people just suck at storytelling. They suck at adapting DC content. I despise it, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, I'm kind of looking forward to the Superman movie from James Gunn, and that's because I just love Superman. Superman, besides Spider-Man, is my all-time favorite superhero. Symbiote Spidey, like best years of Spider-Man in my opinion. I really loved it. Civil War. Secret Wars, stuff like that. It's all fun, but I loved Symbiote Spidey. And anyway, I'm going off track. I love Superman, all right? I just love Superman. The ending of The Flash was vague and didn't properly explain the reset, leaving fans unsure of how it connects to the DC universe. Gal Gadot may continue to play Wonder Woman in the DC universe. Why? How does that make sense, though? They're not really resetting it, are they? If you have Wonder Woman being played by Gal Gadot, that's not a reset. You're going to have her mingling with, new DCU superheroes? That doesn't make sense at all. But her previous films will no longer be considered canon. Other characters may also have their histories changed in the new universe. So basically, it's a crap show. It is. They have no idea what they're doing. James Gunn has been pretty silent about this, honestly. The DC Universe will reboot the DC Extended Universe, but the full extent of the reboot and what lies ahead for the new franchise has become increasingly confusing. Well, I'm more confused at the fact that they're trying to keep the same cast for certain movies and mingle them with new cast in the new movies. Again, wasn't The Flash supposed to reset it? I remember James Gunn talking about it a bunch, saying, yeah, no, The Flash is an amazing movie and it's going to reset the DC Universe. But how did it do that? It just changed one of the actors at the end of the movie, and then it didn't really do anything after that. I don't know. I honestly don't believe him at this point. The old DCEU, despite gaining a strong following among many viewers, has not been consistently successful as far as box office performance and critical reception go. Fundamentally, the franchise was plagued by studio interference and a disorganized overarching narrative. Yeah, no kidding. Largely due to its attempts to compete with its competing franchise, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, it's not much to compete with now since the current MCU is absolute garbage. I feel like anybody could make any movie that would be better than today's content, especially any content from Marvel Disney that's on Disney+. It's all garbage. It's all trash. Largely due to its attempts to compete with its competing franchise, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which had already become a pop culture phenomenon with 2012's The Avengers. By late 2022, the decision was made to reboot the DCEU. Now, I do think it would be a really funny situation if, in contrast to Marvel being really, really good back in the day, and now they're trash and garbage, and then the DCEU was really bad back in the day, and then they become like the best superhero franchise ever for movies. That would be really ironic. And it would just be hilarious if that were to happen. Although I don't really have a lot of faith. Again, I'm looking forward to the Superman movie, but there's no real guarantee that this is going to be good. Peter Safran and James Gunn became the co-CEOs of DC Studios and the creative leads of the rebooted DCU. With both Henry Cavill and Dwayne Johnson announcing their departures from the DCEU roles almost immediately, it seemed certain that the DCU would be a hard reboot of the franchise. I know that The Rock was really excited about the direction of the DCEU at the time, and maybe he just got that bad news and he just decided to call it quits. I know that James Gunn was responsible for Henry Cavill departing ultimately, because I guess he was too old, even though the two Superman actors look exactly the same. Whatever. Despite this, Gunn and Safran noted in their announcement of the upcoming DCU slate that it will only be a partial reboot. Oh, now it's only going to be a partial one. Okay, yeah, no, absolutely. Some actors from the DCEU will continue to play their respective roles in the DCU, while the status of others is still unclear. In the following months, further updates, or lack thereof, have only made matters more confusing. The Flash didn't reset the DC universe. This is exactly what I've been saying. 2023's The Flash was always intended to cause a shakeup for the DCEU. Or was it now? Was it? Okay. Initially set to replace Ben Affleck's Batman and with Michael Keaton's version, and Cavill's Superman with Sasha Calle's Supergirl, with the DCEU reboot underway, it then became the perfect way to explain the transition from the DCEU to the DCU, with Gunn even saying as much. So he said this himself, huh? Okay. Yeah. Trustworthy. Unfortunately, The Flash's ending was way too vague and stupid, by the way, to properly explain the reset, ending with an ostensibly identical DCEU, albeit with George Clooney now as Batman. Yeah, exactly. But even if they had Ben Affleck as Batman in the end, how would that have reset the DCU anyway? Did they have another alternate scene that actually explained how it reset the DC universe? Or was it always going to be just Ben Affleck walking up in the same way that George Clooney did? Because if that's the case, that's not better. And that doesn't make any sense still. But okay. How the ending connects to the DCU, who from the DCEU will stay in the DCU, and what universe Ezra Miller's Barry Allen now inhabits remains unclear. Well, hopefully he doesn't inhabit any of it. I would certainly hope that they don't cast Ezra Miller in any future DC content at all. The guy should not be the Flash, and he should not be in any Warner Bros. Movie. And they pushed this movie out anyway, against the fans' wishes, against it. I really don't understand why studios are always moving against the fans, but they are. And they did the same with The Flash. Nobody wants to see this guy as the Flash again. Blue Beetle is being called the first DC Universe character. Yeah, that's because James Gunn is just being nice. That's because he's just being nice. He just wants Superman, all right? He said it in a podcast with the guy who played Lex Luthor in Smallville, all right? Michael Rosenbaum, awesome actor, best Lex Luthor ever. I'm not even kidding. Best Lex Luthor ever, in my opinion. Grew up with Smallville, amazing show. And he has a great podcast, by the way. You guys should totally check out Michael Rosenbaum's podcast. James Gunn said it himself. He's like, no. Blue Beetle's the first DCU character. But the first DCU movie? Whoo! Superman, baby! That's of course, I'm using a little bit of hyperbole, but that's basically what he said. The upcoming film Blue Beetle is similarly in an odd position. The movie was developed before Gunn and Safran became co-CEOs and was, therefore, part of the old DCU. Yet the director, Angel Manuel Soto, voiced his belief that the film is part of Gunn's DCU. Yeah, it's called Denial. He wants it to be a part of Gunn's DCU, and maybe Blue Beetle will show up in a future film if people like the film enough. But I don't think they're going to. And if they do, great. But I don't think it's going to be a good film. I don't. Not after everything I've seen in the trailers, and especially after the director came out and attacked fans, just like everybody else does. I swear, these guys are just so far up in their own heads, it's ridiculous. James Gunn later confirmed that while Xolo Maridueña's Jamie Reyes will join his DCU, the movie Blue Beetle is not part of the new universe. This perhaps confirms that Blue Beetle is part of the DCEU, but Reyes, like Viola Davis's Amanda Waller and John Cena's Peacemaker, will be a DCEU character who is carried over into the DCEU. Yes, I think I did hear something about John Cena's Peacemaker being a part of it. And why wouldn't it? I mean, if James Gunn's going to put his wife in everything, why wouldn't he put John Cena in? Why wouldn't he put Peacemaker in there? Peacemaker was actually a really good show, I think. I think it did a great job of attacking both sides of the political spectrum, although I feel like there was a little bit too much of it in that show. I wish it had just kind of just stuck with the main story, and they did, but I just wish they'd just leave all the politics out of stuff. I just want to be entertained, I just want to watch shows that tell me a really great story and that give these characters fantastic arcs. You know what I mean? I'm just so sick of the political stuff. Just stop inserting it. I mean, you don't sound original when you do that. You just sound like everybody else who's pushing the same message. Just like Barbie did. Anyway, Aquaman 2 releases after Blue Beetle, but isn't a DC Universe movie. That's kind of strange. Blue Beetle's like the first DCU character, but they're just going to completely write off Aquaman. Even though I guess technically he was in the post-credit scene after The Flash. I mean, it was kind of a stupid post-credit scene. They just made Aquaman look drunk, like a drunk loser. But, again, whatever. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom will be released after Blue Beetle, and like the latter film, it is not considered part of the DCU continuity. This places the movie in an awkward position as it sits between Blue Beetle, a DCEU film whose protagonist will join the DCU, and Superman Legacy, the first official movie in the DCU. Yeah, but Aquaman 2 is probably going to be way better, and people are probably going to go and see it. I know I'm going to pay to see it, because honestly, Jason Momoa's Aquaman is pretty awesome. I mean, he's a total Chad and a bro, and he had a great first movie. I really loved the CGI in that movie, and I loved the story, and the action was pretty spectacular. They had some great practical effects and some great CGI, and the villains were not bad either. Really, I mean, I would watch a sequel, absolutely, and I'd be willing to bet that a lot of other people are probably going to go and see Aquaman 2, and I bet a lot more people are going to see Aquaman 2 than Blue Beetle. To make matters worse, Jason Momoa's future in the DCU is still unclear, with early rumors suggesting he would switch to the role of Lobo, while later statements from Momoa himself strongly implied that he will join the DCU and remain in the Aquaman role. Truth be told, yeah, he'd be a pretty awesome Lobo. I remember he was talking about that. I don't know if he wrote about it or if it was in an interview, but he was saying that he had always wanted to be Lobo, and that he was asking people if he could be Lobo. I could totally see him as Lobo. I mean, he really just looks exactly like him at this point. It's amazing. He could totally do it. He could pull it off. But, if it doesn't work out, maybe he should just move on. Because he had a great Aquaman movie. It was great. I mean, it was great. I loved it, especially the trench part. Oh, man. Gal Gadot has teased a DC Universe return. 2017's Wonder Woman was one of the most successful installments in the DCEU, and although its sequel, Wonder Woman 1984, suffered from a negative reception and poor box office performance, with the latter in part due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there was still excitement for a third movie. The sudden cancellation of Wonder Woman 3 came as a shock to viewers, seemingly teasing the end of Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman tenure. Despite her being one of the most beloved parts of the old DCEU, I liked her. I liked the first Wonder Woman movie as well, especially the part with her and Chris Pine just dancing in the snow. Great scene, by the way. Since the film's December 2022 cancellation, however, there have been no announcements of Gadot stepping down from the Wonder Woman role like Cavill's Superman and Johnson's Black Adam. That's pretty interesting. There is evidence that Gal Gadot may play Wonder Woman in the DCU. Okay. I mean, it doesn't really feel like a reboot. It just feels like they're recasting a bunch of people, and then they're just going to be like, oh, this is just a new universe now. I don't see how they can possibly explain this in a good way, especially since I guess The Flash was supposed to do that, but it didn't. And some characters are continuing from the DCEU to the DC Universe, and some aren't. So I don't know about Amanda Waller, but I think that Peacemaker is going to be there. James Gunn and Peter Safran noted in the DCU is not a complete reboot of the DCEU, which really sucks. It really should be. Certain characters from the DCEU would remain in the DCU, with Viola Davis returning as Amanda Waller in the TV series Waller. Oh, great. There you go. John Cena's Peacemaker and the rest of Peacemaker's ensemble cast, including specifically Vigilante and John Economos, also will return to the DCU set second season of the series. And so here's the big question that I'm wondering and everybody else is wondering. Will there ever actually be a DC reboot? Well, if it's not going to be right now, then we're going to be waiting a long time. And I think by the time it finally does happen and someone comes into play where they take all the materials and actually try to reboot it, unlike what James Gunn is doing, probably not for a long time. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen for a while. We're going to be waiting like another 10 years while they push out only like 4 or 5 DC films, you know what I mean? Since The Flash did not truly directly depict the DCEU becoming the DCU, the continuity shift may never truly be addressed in new properties. The Flash may have gone back and altered his reality after meeting the George Clooney iteration of Bruce Wayne, resulting in the DCU. Simply put, some characters like Amanda Waller, Peacemaker, and potentially Wonder Woman and Aquaman will remain unchanged in the new universe, while others, like Batman and Superman, will be completely different. In either case, the alterations, or lack thereof, in the DC universe can be hand-waved by explaining them as the effects of Barry Allen's time traveling. No, I don't think so. To me, it just feels lazy. I mean, I feel like they should take some risks. Marvel did back in the day. They took a risk with Robert Downey Jr., and they took a risk by creating the cinematic universe and teasing it right after the ending of the first film. If you want these things to be successful, you need to take risks. And this is not taking risks. This is just piggybacking off of the fan base that's already there. And then you're trying to create new fans that mingle with the old fans who are actually at constant war with each other. I don't know if you have seen DCU James Gunn fans and Zack Snyder DC fans arguing, but it's brutal. It's brutal. None of them agree. You know, the Snyder fans just want the Snyder stuff to stay there. And then the DCU fans want the Snyderverse people to go away. And James Gunn's just like, let's bring them all together, guys. It's a terrible idea, in my opinion. But that's about all I have for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, like and share. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And I hope to see you all again next time. Say goodbye, Play-Doh. Meow, meow.